theory, this should now be done. I apologize for being a couple minutes late, or 8 minutes late. Are you seeing anything, Megan?
No.
It says it's live.
Do we have to remove this niche?
No. Are you seeing this?
No. Almost there.
I see it on YouTube.
All right.
I believe you guys are live. I don't know how to.
Well, I'm alive. Are you alive?
I'm alive. You're looking alive, Dan.
I must say you look a lot more chipper than you did at 5:30 this morning when I got to the vineyard.
Well, that's because I'd actually woken up a couple hours before, got my calisthenics in, was feeling
Say
fresh.
I appreciated the 2 hours of extra sleep this morning.
But, it's good. You gotta be fresh.
So I have to ask our technical crew: are we good to go here, you guys? We have all of our friends aboard, and we're back.
We're back.
Yeah. And we're in the middle of harvest. Brought in some beautiful Zinfandel this morning.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Not much of it, but that's the story of this vintage, it looks like so far.
Yeah, it's been, we started harvest a couple of weeks ago, and our earliest start to harvest
In July.
ever. Yeah. July 30th, we started picking Sauvignon Blanc. Just an unbelievably early year. We were still in our swimsuits when we got there on the first day of harvest. It was kind of like, what's going on here?
Well, I think we finished bottling on the 29th,
Yeah,
so it was not much of a vacation.
Just like we planned.
Yeah,
just like we
planned.
planned.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, we are almost done. We have a couple days left of Sauvignon Blanc, and then it's straight into Zinfandels, and it's been kind of a crazy start. Starting to feel like harvest now, but it's kind of weird to start feeling like you're in harvest when you're almost already done with Sauvignon Blanc.
I know, but the weather's been fantastic, really. I mean, relatively mild for the summer season. It's kind of like,
Dude, it's
crossed.
another vintage of the
Another
century.
vintage.
I'm calling it now.
100 points.
100 points.
Well, I think maybe we're right.
Okay.
Well, anyway, we're glad to be back. I'm John Williams, owner and founder of Frog's Leap and winemaker. What do you do?
I'm Rory Williams, winemaker, vineyard manager, a little bit of everything on that side. We two yahoos get together and talk grapes, decide who gets the credit for the wine every year.
This is exciting. We did these live broadcasts during COVID, and I can't even tell you how many people. I had almost 4 or 5 people say that those were really meaningful during COVID. So, to our listener out there, thank you.
We're just recording this for posterity for your
that must be it for my memoirs.
Yeah, exactly. No, and it's a big part of what was really fun about those tastings that we were doing during COVID is getting the chance to, discuss the wines, hear questions from you guys. Please ask questions in the comments. We'll get them shouted at us basically as we go through. When we were doing those tastings before, as I remember, we were in the big, Rutherford room with a big wide concrete table and really nice fancy.
We've had to downsize.
We've had to down budget cuts. Our producers in my ear who saying, if we don't like it, we can go do the recording under the stairs in the barrel shay. So that we're very happy where we are. getting a chance to talk about a couple of fun wines, our 2022 Cabernet and the 2022 Chavez and Leeds Vineyard Cabernet Franc, which is kind of a rarity for us.
And it is well afternoon, so a little pour wouldn't be the worst thing. What do you think? Start with the Cab, the 22 Cab?
Let's start with the 22 Cabernet.
Yeah, it's become an old friend at this point.
It has.
Yeah, we've had this wine in release now for a few months, and we're getting down to the last of it. So time to push it out and and let it enter into the cellars and the memories that will come from this wine. It was a struggle, this vintage.
So the 22 vintage is, and we're among friends here with you guys, so we can. What part of the
nothing but the straight stuff here?
Yeah, nothing but the truth. Yeah. Slightly vital truth. No, it's 22 was. I'll just say it from my perspective. That was the most challenging year I've ever had to deal with in the wine business. And I have not been in the business all that long, but about 15 years here with Frogsley.
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
When you take hot, smoky years like 17 and 2020 and all these crazy years that kind of had bigger headlines. 22 with the heat we got that year was absolutely
the heat we got in a very short period of time.
Super short period of time.
It unfortunately in a time that we still had Cabernet on the line.
Yeah. But I think what's beautiful about years like 22 is that it forces a reckoning about what it means to be a great vintage or another vintage in Napa. Okay, say this was the most challenging vintage I've had, but I think you probably just saw a smile on my face when I was smelling this wine, because I remember being out there in 2022, which the low light really in 22 was this extended period about a week long with 115 degrey heat.
What we now call a heat dome, right?
Well, we were calling it a heat dome at the time too, but we were mainly dealing with the heat dome at the time. I think many of our listeners across the country have become familiar with the term heat dome this summer. So it was that kind of situation for about a week in Napa, which 115 degrees, topped out at 118. I think the worst day, the sun set and it was 103 degrees. I thought, oh man, screw this. It was pretty nuts. But it forces you to think about what it means to be great and otherwise in Napa, because to me, what I love about this wine is that, and it took a lot of work to get there. It's a triumph out of that vintage, and I think reflects, has an image of that vintage where it wasn't like we tried to manufacture something else. Instead, it was, how do we get as much? We know there's freshness in there. We know there's life. We know that there's balance in these wines. How do we get that and allow that wine to kind of reveal itself, as opposed to trying to make it into something that it shouldn't be that year? So, as I recall with the 22, we backed off the extraction. We were super careful with oak. We were super careful with time on skins.
Okay, but I'm going to spill the real secret sauce of this wine.
Oh, yeah?
That's called selection.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one of the oldest sayings in the wine business is that great wineries, high quality wineries, only make great wines even in rough vintages. And the primary way of doing that is selection. And we deselected a lot of wine in 22, and we brought the best forward. And this wine's...
Yeah, no, we declassified about 20% of our fruit in 2022, which this was mainly some of the fruit that was latest to ripen and never made it over the goal line. But I think you guys are tasting with this wine that black fruit, that depth of character. To me, this kind of real savory depth to the wine, that is what we strive for with Cabernet Sauvignon. That's the angle we're going for on here. And that is funny. We did some comparative tastings around the valley.
Speaking of tasting,
with 2022s, and it was interesting. Wines that seemed like they aimed for balance and aimed for energy, and not necessarily for bigness or extraction or kind of the things you would aim, normally aim for around a Napa. Those were the successful examples. Whereas things that wines that kind of aimed for this knockout punch of a wine, taking all that heat and going, whoa, now we can make a really, really big wine.
We get double big.
Discombobulated and very, very rough tannically and kind of just no fun at all, which is not why we make wine.
Well, and look, Rory, I'm going to give you a little credit. The connection that you've made now, being in the vineyard and being in the cellar and having a feet in both camps. You had to be in the vineyard in this vintage and see where these vines were, where they were struggling and getting them off and getting them scheduled in. And so a lot of credit to you in a rough vintage for making, I think, some very fun wine.
This is a very fun wine. And I'll say that I hope many of you open these wines up with a little bit of time in advance. Is the 22 is going to be one of those wines that, I remember when we bottled this, it was kind of, the wine was super reticent, it was very tight. It was kind of like it was still these after effects, the aftershocks of the 2022 vintage, even once it went into bottle in 2024. And we typically age our wines in bottle after bottling at least 9 months in bottle before we even want to release them. And a lot of that is because these wines take that much time to kind of unfold themselves. That was especially true in 2022. And so it's really satisfying to taste this wine now that it's fully ready to go, fully opened up, because it's rich. It's actually displaying.
You say fully, but I think this has got a ways to go. This is going to be a long life vintage. I think, but it's beautiful. Yeah.
What other hot vintages do you remember? Is there anything that in your mind? Because I say, hot vintage for me, but I've only been, for most of the time that you've been making wine, I've been twiddling my thumbs in high school or something.
Yeah, but the old memory isn't what it used to. I hid my own Easter eggs this year, so memory is.
You've been doing that for about 20 years.
97 comes to mind. It was but that was also the quantity wasn't so big in 22. It was
fairly low vintage.
Yeah. So that I think really brought these grapes along. It seems like we're getting more curveballs as time goes along. Is that just me, or is it? We talk about climate change. We talk about all that's going on. This year being so early, is this a topic you think about?
It's yes, and I think that it's hard to, it's always hard to say, well, this weather event is this kind of situation. Yes, we are getting more curveballs. I think it, in terms of how we're approaching what we're doing, since we're in a position where we can and do a lot around the winery to address big picture, but a lot of it is less of a question of yes, is it happening, or no, it's not happening. As a farmer, what's happening is happening, and you got to deal with it. And so it's wines like the 2022 really force your hand in terms of understanding this is not a when it gets to 110, 115 degrees right in the middle of Cabernet harvest, and your heat mitigation equipment, it's so hot that the heat mitigation equipment that we had started melting in the field. So I was out there while this stuff was breaking apart, and while out there fixing, gave myself heat stroke. And all of this is with the aim of not so much, you're not out there going, I wonder if climate change. You're going, okay, how do we attack this problem? What do I do now? Mm-hmm. What do I do? What's my next step? And I think that's
farming in a nutshell.
Basically. It is farming, but it's also, I think, winemaking in a lot of ways is because we had to bring it into the cellar, and okay, what do we do now? Do we just follow the same old protocol that we've always done? No, you're constantly adjusting this way and that. I'm really satisfied where this went. We had been for years backing off the new oak percentage in our Cabernet even further, but using it in really, really smart, using it smartly, of getting the right oak on the right stuff. We backed off it even further, and I think it paid dividends in 22 because the wine has, with all that sunshine and heat that it got, the natural richness and natural ripeness was always going to be right there. And so if you went trying to squeeze every last little bit of power out of it, well, of course you'd want to do that, right? More power is more better, right?
No.
But in Napa, it's not so much that kind of approach to how to get there. And so you're out there, instead of thinking like, well, on the one hand, you're fixing these things as they're melting, going, these stupid machines, how come they can't work when you really need them? On the other hand, you're kind of thinking, okay, what's my next step? How do I fix this? Because we want to make good wine.
We want to make good wine. I think a question that is, many of you heard us talk about the 21 vintage, which was so shy of rain, 12 inches of rain, the driest vintage I remember for decades. And then the 22 vintage with the heat dome, or whatever you want to call it. I got a lot of questions about, people know we farm without irrigation. And people said, I bet you wish you had some irrigation now. But I honestly believe our vines produced better with their roots down deep in the ground, pulling up 56 degrees of water from 10 feet down in the vineyard, as opposed to the water that comes out of the 180 degree water that comes out of a drip hose that's in the top 6 inches of soil. I think trusting the natural intelligence of these vines, getting their roots down deep in their community, actually helps us be more resilient than having lots of water to dump on the vines. Any perspective on that?
I mean, I would say that everybody around the valley was dumping water on their vines. I don't know how much of it actually really helped. When we talk about heat mitigation, this is the same way we try and heat things up during frost. We'll try and cool things down during harvest. But those deep roots, what you call the big straw, right? Being able to tap into a deep wellspring of water, of nutrients in these really stressful situations, I think helped make, because the 22 is largely Rossi and Leeds. This is largely from the west side of Rutherford. Almost all of our fruit here at the winery, which is on the east side of Rutherford,
was still out there.
And we'll just put it on air for our friends here. Got bulked out. We sold it off in bulk at a loss. It never made it over the goal line. We understand now that a lot of that has to do with some of the virus that's going around the valley, and so we've been able to respond to that. But 22 was a wake-up call with that, and also I think, a testament to when you have these healthy vines that have a healthy root system, a really healthy soil underneath them, they can tap into some resources when they need it to make it through these stressful situations.
It's interesting you bring up fertility, because I think mostly have moisture, but they need nutrients in a stressful situation.
They need a little bit of everything, and so with that, they're dependent upon their root systems to, even if you're irrigating, they're still dependent upon a root system to take that up. You can't
the straw.
Yeah, they don't have it. You can't put an IV on them, right? So, and so it's really a matter of like, okay, what kind of access do they even have? How big is the hand for them to take resources? Yeah, and our vines have that
deep root
deep root system to be able to make that happen. Yeah. Dad, I want us to pour the Cabernet Franc now. Keep the Cabernet in your glass. If you have two glasses, like we do here, boy, we came prepared today.
Now look at us. Yeah, it's good cups. What are these for?
Yeah,
sorry. And I brought the spice. I hope you appreciate that.
I feel like we don't often talk about your interior decorating skills.
I honestly,
unbelievably
picked these
beautiful,
out of my own garden this morning.
Beautiful tableau that you've put together for us. That has nothing at all to do with
I'd love to see a few thumbs up in our chat section. Yeah. You guys still out there?
And I think it's fun to talk about Cab Franc because this is a comparatively rare wine for Franc. Like we only make 500 cases of this wine, not even every year. It's only
pretty rare,
maybe 2 years out of 3 that we're making this now. But these are vines planted in 1989. I mentioned Leeds, one of our 2 estate ranches, farmed owned by the Chavez and Leeds family, over on the west side of Rutherford. The Leeds family, and Pesh, Lauren Pesh. They
keep adding names. Chavez, now Leeds, now Pesh.
It's a cool historic property.
Well, it is because historic is the word. They just celebrated their 100th year of family ownership of the vineyard. So
it's very cool. But these vines planted in 1989 have been an essential part of Franc's Cabernet Sauvignon for a very, very long time. We've been doing these retrospective tastings recently, and it's amazing to see Cab Franc popping up into the blend in the early 90s of the Cabernet and staying there. And pretty much every vintage of Franc's Cabernet Sauvignon since the early 90s, since the vines for this wine became mature, have a little bit of Cab Franc from Leeds in it. And I think that's, it's part of our signature style. The 22 has, I think, 4 or 5% Cab Franc in there. And we'll talk. I think I want to come back to the Cabernet to talk about what Cab Franc. Well, I want to talk about what Cab Franc does in Cabernet because it's very different than what we're trying to do with Cab Franc on its own.
As a varietal, okay.
As a varietal wine, because I think this is the same syndrome that happens with Merlot around the valley. Is people see Cabernet Sauvignon has big black fruit and lots of tannin and lots of power, and it's a Bordeaux red grape. Cabernet Franc is a Bordeaux red grape. Therefore, it should basically be Cabernet Sauvignon. I don't know, but $20 more expensive, and like that's kind of the weird attitude around some of that stuff is that it's if Cabernet is big and fruity and powerful, then Cabernet Franc is big and fruity and powerful, but somehow different. But it's just funny because Cab Franc is a relatively minor player in Bordeaux. You find it usually as a minority grape on the right bank over in Saint-Emilion, Pomerol, but you really don't see a ton of it around Bordeaux. Where you really see it and where it kind of
by Bordeaux, you mean the left bank?
Medoc, left bank. But you see it a little more on the right bank, and there are great, wines that have 40-50% Cab Franc in them, places like Cheval Blanc. But where it really shines and where it finds its home as a varietal wine, as a 100% Cabernet Franc, is up in the Loire.
In the Chinon.
In the Chinons, the Anjou, that kind of area. That creates an entirely different profile of a grape. And I think that's, if you've never had a great Chinon from the Loire Valley in France, and you compare that to some inked out monster from Napa, and you go, how are these the same grape? And I think that's what's fun. I remember going down to Kermit Lynch with you when we were kids. You would always go down there right after harvest and buy like 10 cases of French wine because apparently you couldn't stand your own wine at that point.
Oh, come on.
But you would grab a couple of cases.
You have to try the other wines, the simple wines that other people make in order to enjoy the profundity of your own
But I think it's funny because you would always get Chinon, and so we grew accustomed to that. And I still think that it's, in a lot of ways, the Cabernet Franc on its own is an interesting complement to our Sauvignon Blanc, which is we're not trying to copy Sancerre or Loire Valley, but we're inspired by those wines. I find myself inspired by Loire Valley Cab Franc as well. And I think that shows up in the wine, where this is not, we have never gone for, these vines don't permit. The soils are very similar to what you would find in the Loire, with a little clay, a little bit of gravel in there, these kind of interface soils. And it goes for more of this, fig leaf, unabashedly herbal kind of expression.
Are you smelling that right now? Is that what you're telling me you're smelling?
But with...
Because this seems so much more profound than Chinon to me. This.
Well, it's obviously a better wine because we made it down. No, but it's. But I think it's from that angle of things where it's less about trying to be this big, inky, powerful wine, but instead it's about that aromatic kind of delicacy on top. It's very, very top notey. The fruit is there, but it's red fruit and it's light, and then underneath is tremendous power. And I think that speaks to why we use it in our Cabernet Sauvignon.
So there's some genealogical history here, is there not? I believe Cabernet Franc is one of the parents, along with Sauvignon Blanc, of Cabernet Sauvignon.
It is, yeah.
So the father is you see where I'm going with this.
I see where you're going with that. I'm refusing to follow you there.
Well, that was worth a try.
Unless you want to point out that Cabernet Franc, not only is it the parent of Cabernet Sauvignon, it's actually not originally from the Loire or Bordeaux. It's from Basque Country. So this it's original.
So the Sauvage.
It's down by Biarritz and just over the border in Spain. That's where it's kind of naturally from. And it's funny. It's one of the, it's what they call a founder variety. It's one of the oldest varietal wines it's what the oldest varietal red grape in France.
Is that right?
That's right. So it's kind of the old man. So if you want, I don't know if you have a Santa beard or something. If you can grow out your beard a little bit, and so it's this ancient variety in a lot of ways. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and so it had time to, have an accidental crossing with Sauvignon Blanc, create Cabernet Sauvignon, and have Cabernet Sauvignon still be a very, very old grape.
What makes you so certain it was accidental?
I don't know. We go back and ask the grape hybridists in the 17th century and see what they were thinking.
Maybe.
But I think it's cool because it has this historical connection. It's one of the parents of Cabernet Sauvignon, and yet and there's an element of it that you can that's reflected in Cabernet Sauvignon, but it is very much its own kind of wild, old grape that kind of does its own thing. And it's funny because it's an incredibly valuable grape around the valley, and I love it because of that savage character, that side, that wildness.
Yeah.
I think that people typify it as green and having a kind of a bell pepper character, and I think we try to steer away from having this intensely green bell pepper aroma, and that's not a lot of fun when it's just kind of over the top in that direction. But I think sometimes the word green gets a
bad name.
Yeah, it gets a bad rap around here, and that's just symptomatic of kind of the steroids era in Napa, where like anything that was green was.
We had a couple prominent critics who didn't.
It drove a desire to burn it out of the grape, right? And what you mean by that is, so as on the vineyard side, if you're trying to burn something out of it, it's pretty close to what you do. Is you just take all the leaves off of the vine around the fruit, let the sun just go crazy on it, plant it in a really warm site. Leave it out there critically for a really, really long time. Let it get super ripe, get the hang time. Boy, I've got to burn the green out of that. And it always just seemed funny to me. It's like, boy, we got to put lipstick all over this grape in order to make it taste good. It's like, why the hell are you growing this grape?
Destroy the very reason that you should have
planted
planted
in the first
grape.
place. Which is funny because I think it shows it can reflect Napa power, because this is a more powerful wine than most wines you would find from most Cab Francs you get from the Loire. But I think aromatically it's more reminiscent of that style, where it's very much more about that savory dimension. And when you get it on the palate, the power is, it almost belies the nose. The nose is very delicate, very aromatic, and then it's kind of mouth-filling. We've always noted this. I know this. I was going over our blending tastings for the last 10 years, which we keep.
I wonder what you do for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Just a typical Saturday morning. No, but it's always this blending tasting where you're tasting all the young Cabernets and then the Cabernet Franc. This is, in a few months after they've been made.
It sounds more fun than it is.
We're usually doing it about 8 o'clock in the morning, which means it's an hour after we usually start drinking wine, of course. But it's when you're the most harshly critical of your own wines is at about 8 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. And we're tasting through all these young Cabernets, and the ink, the power, the fruity, it's got a little too much oak, we back off it. It's all these descriptors that are all about how powerful and fruity the wines are. And then the Cab Franc, you're like, that's pretty green. And it's this smell up front that's kind of like, it's still wrapped up in its shell. But in every single note, every single year, we note, wow, but it's got a lot of depth. It's got a lot of power at the same time. So let's just wait on this wine. Wow. And that's kind of how the decision tree goes for us every year, is how much Cab Franc to put in there.
Yeah, and what years that we can get excited about offering a single varietal Cab Franc, because as you pointed out, those are relatively rare and collectible, in my opinion. A quick question, because I was talking to Frank about his vineyard planted, as you mentioned, in '89, and he told me it was the Petrus clone of Cabernet Franc. Mm-hmm. And I go, so Frank, there is no Cabernet Franc at Petrus. And he said there used to be. Mm-hmm. And that Peter Newton actually brought over this clone, eventually got planted down at the cemetery block of at Yountville Vineyards, and that's where we got the budwood for that. Does that hold water with you, or what's this whole thing about clones?
Yeah.
Is it really that big of a deal? Clones? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Talk to me. What's a clone?
Okay. So you take a grape. You go out into our vineyards right now, and you take a grape, and you go and take that grape, plant it in the soil, and you'll get a grapevine. But you go and get a Cabernet grape, or a Cabernet Franc grape, or a Sauvignon Blanc grape, and you plant it in the soil, you will not get a Cabernet Sauvignon.
So the vine won't be true to its seed.
It's not true to seed. So it's like an apple in that way. So you can do the same thing with it. It's why Johnny Appleseed's kind of a funny story, is because you plant an apple seed, and you are
no idea
very likely to get something completely different. And maybe
it's still an apple.
Inedible. Yeah, it's still the species apple, yes. And you'll get a vine, and it may produce fruit, but it will not produce Cabernet Sauvignon. That's not how they work. In order to propagate vines and apple trees, you have to take cuttings of whatever you want to plant, and you have to graft it onto a situation, or you can actually, in the right kinds of soils.
This makes me so proud.
The way they used to do things.
I thought didn't teach them about the birds and the bees.
He talks about the clones and the drones.
But it's Eddie proud. Go on, son.
Wait, the birds and the bees? What do you? When you take a cutting of a previous vine, not only is it you're going to get Cabernet Sauvignon, you're going to get the exact same genetic clone of whatever.
That DNA will be true.
Yeah, that DNA will be true in that particular cutting. That doesn't mean that mutations can't happen over time, and it doesn't mean that accidental crossings can happen. They're pretty rare. They're hard to do because grape flowers self-fertilize, but it's possible to cross-fertilize, and that's why these things are kind of rare historically. But things like mutations will happen, and they will happen in situ. So you plant a Cabernet Franc vine at Chateau Petrus in the 19th century, and it goes in the ground, it starts to grow. You do that 3,000 times across this field, and most of them will kind of stay the same, but they may start to slowly shift in that direction. And the way that many, historically, that a vineyard person would replant their block, if a vine dies or something like that, is they'll kind of go around in the fall as the vines are ripening, and they'll go, that vine looks nice. I'm going to put a little mark on that vine. Or that vine has really nice green leaves. So they take their cuttings
from select vines.
Well, I was getting there if you want me to get there. But
I was trying to speed it up a little bit. We only have a TikTok,
No, but I think you can take a cutting from wherever.
Mm-hmm.
But naturally, over time, you tell me, well, if I'm going to take cuttings, I'm going to take it from the best vineyard or from the best vines.
Yeah.
And so those same best vines will tend to propagate themselves within an area. And sometimes your neighbor will say, whoa, your vines seem to be, very consistent with their production. They seem to have great flavor. Can I get a few cuttings from you?
Yeah.
And so you'll have these kind of local mutations that tend to spread organically over time.
Yeah.
And then some American idiot will come in 200 years later and go, whoa, Petrus clone, take it, put it in a suitcase, bring it back to Napa.
And make a story out of it.
And Petrus clone is 99% story, right? I mean, Petrus is one of the most expensive wines in the world. I think historically it did have a little bit of Cab Franc in there, but it's now largely 100% Merlot. And so it's the kind of thing where it's a cool story. Does this mean that it tastes like Chateau Petrus? Well, no. But it's
we could probably say that because who out there is drinking Chateau
They're going to
Petrus?
send us a cease and desist. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. Christian will come down the road and walk us on the head.
It'll be fine.
But it's just a cool story because we talk about, it's a way of talking about where the history of the grape came from. And so...
You're running low there. Which are your glasses?
This is my Cab Franc glass.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll take a little more.
And I advise you put a little 22 Cab in there because it's interesting to see how they are developing with a little bit of time as well.
Yeah.
So because these are young wines, and so expecting them to age in the few minutes we're here, but they're really opening up, and this is we talk about this all the time. So much of the art of winemaking is what we call the élevage, or the opening of the flower. And our wines are made in what we call as a reductive fashion. The wines are put in the bottle while the flower is still not fully open, and then with the anticipation that those will unfold in the bottle for years to come. And that's why our wines are so long aged. But it's interesting, even in the short period that we've been sitting here, that flower has started to open for both of these wines, and that makes it
the world's greatest decanter right in front of you.
World's greatest decanter,
is your own glass and time. So, what was the original idea behind having Cab Franc in the Cabernet Sauvignon blend? Was it just sort of a matter of accident that seemed to work out? Because it seems, I know. A little spice.
Cabernet Franc brings the party to wine. It brings a little spice. It brings like an undersalted dish, you know, a little Cabernet Franc. It's not like it smells like a hot pepper or that it smells like any particular spice. No, that's not it. It's just that extra pizzazz you get on the palate, and you smell and taste when you have a pure Cabernet Franc. That can be overdone, right? So modesty, even I think a varietal Cabernet Franc is a pretty difficult wine to make, and again, why we don't make it every year. But it brings the party. It brings the spice.
Where's your party hat?
Well, I brought the peppers. You were supposed to bring the
we could have a party here with some Scotch, but you've also brought some Scotch bonnets.
I know. I'm looking forward to stuffing a chicken with
there you go. No, it's
I often think about it, Dad, as like Cabernet Sauvignon, 2 words. You have the Cabernet side, this kind of big black fruit and all of that, and then you have the Sauvignon side, the savage, the wild, the savory side. A little bit of Cab Franc in there. I've always felt it kind of helps lift up that side of Cabernet Sauvignon. And so it's not so much about like trying to add Cabernet Franc flavor to Cabernet Sauvignon, but instead lifting out and expressing that part of Cabernet. Some, we often say just just Cabernet. And when you say Cabernet around here, people mean Cabernet Sauvignon, and often we just shorten it to Cab, right?
Yeah.
But say the word out loud, Cabernet Sauvignon, and you have a much more complex grape. You have it capable of all this dimension. And Cab Franc gets in there, and it's like salt. It seasons up that side of Cabernet Sauvignon in a way that if you didn't do it, you'd still have Cabernet Sauvignon, but you wouldn't have it as expressive as you like.
Well, and some of these aromas of the Cab Franc are going to add aromatic complexity as the wine ages too. So we talk about some of our older Cabernets, and we've been tasting a lot of them lately because, and some of you will be, we'll make all of you aware of this. I've been talked into releasing a few of my older wines from our collection of older vintages. So keep an eye out for that. But in the process of this, Rory and I have been tasting these wines and making cellar notes on them, and so we've been trying a lot of these older wines, and the aromatic complexities of these 30-plus-year-old Cabernet Sauvignons, you have to have them there to start before they can evolve, right?
Yeah, and I think that what we taste when we're going through these wines have become not just 4 years old, but 14 years old and beyond. It's all those kinds of savory notes, specifically, especially in the Cabernet Sauvignons, that tend to transform most dramatically over time. Fruit kind of stays up here, and it kind of slowly declines, either more slowly or more quickly. But it's the aromatic complexity, all these secondary and tertiary notes that start with a little bit of green, a little bit of herbal, dusty kind of aromas transform into tobacco and tea and cigar box and all of that.
Wow.
And that's what's really cool to taste in some of these older wines. Otherwise, you kind of just have a big fruity wine, but lesser than, because the fruit's gone away. And so we fight a lot to keep these, it's still a challenge. I will say that with the Cabernet Franc, this is probably the block that we spend the most amount of time in. This is multiple passes through the Cab Franc in order to make this happen.
A lot of handwork with this.
A lot of handwork with this. These are older vines. When if you come out to look at these vines, and you drive around the valley, most vines are kind of neat, and they have their cordons, and they're nicely tucked up.
But we should post some pictures of these.
We'll get some on there. They're wild. So imagine standing up, and you got 4 arms, and they're going in all these different crazy directions. They're wrapped on each other. They've got slightly pre-modern trellising in there, in a sense that they're not kind of neatly coiffed to go exactly here and do exactly this. Instead, they're kind of allowed to be what they are. They have a little bit of an overhang to them. It allows them to be a little wild. They're big, wide spacing, big, chunky vines. And they take a lot of care, because that can lead to, if you're not careful, that can lead to vines and clusters that are overgrown. And if you're too uncareful in how you manage leaf removal and thinning, you can end up with kind of big, blown out, kind of merely fruity wines that are not a whole lot of fun, that don't have that kind of spice box element. And I think that's what we're really aiming for with the wine.
Well, we're going to get down to brass tacks, but first of all, you probably heard a little background. Like, say you want to come here, we're in front of a live studio audience today. Sadie, my dog, it's her birthday, and she wanted to be part of this. And so, Sadie, do you want to come say hi to everyone? Yeah, maybe not. All right. Well, look, all of you, if you don't mind chatting a happy birthday to Sadie, who's
It's already sending their love.
oh, they're already sending their love to
Oh,
oh,
happy
look
birthday.
at that. There's a virtual.
You don't
Happy
understand
birthday.
a single thing that's
Yeah.
happening, do you? Yeah, no, you're such a sweet dog.
All right.
No, but I mean, I think that
Let's
Wait,
get
what-
down to brass tacks. We need a rating for these wines. You know, come on. We get the two things that are really important here that people know is what's the rating and what are we going to eat with these wines when we take them.
99 points.
Not
Just, well, 100. There's just too much pressure with 100 points.
I get the world's second best macaroni and cheese.
Exactly.
I've told you that story, haven't I?
Yeah.
No, I think it.
Drinking window.
Wait, we're getting a question from our live studio audience. What's that, honey?
What's the aging potential of wine?
Oh,
What's the drinking
aging
window?
potential.
Yeah.
I see. Aging potential, the rating, and what do we drink with them? These are the
No, the
questions.
drinking window for these wines.
Oh, drinking window. Okay.
So,
We opened up. Let's see. We opened up the 16 Cab Franc from the same vineyard not that long ago, and it was
funny. It had gotten fruitier over time.
Yeah.
You know, I remember that wine when it was fairly young. 16 was a pretty closed up vintage early on, very, very fresh vintage. And that wine was hard as nails for a few years, but it's opened up into this beautiful kind of fruity wine. I feel like Cab Franc is like Merlot in a way where you have this
long arc.
it's this long arc, but it starts fairly low. So, you know, when this wine is freshly bottled, it can be sometimes a challenge, and it just climbs over time. Merlot's the same way, where it gets in the bottle and it kind of just gives you the stank eye for a few months. It doesn't really want to be consumed, but that arc just keeps growing over time, and you have this long arc of aging. Cabernet Sauvignon, on the other hand, has, you know, the 22s in a beautiful spot right now because it's still in its kind of youthful climb. Cabernet quickly goes up and has this youthful moment when it's, you know, 3 to 6 years old. So the 22 is right in the heart of this youthful moment. You know, it's fresh, it's got lots of fruit, it's boisterous, it's got all the power in there. It's still waiting to develop a lot of its secondary and tertiary kind of characteristics, and it'll go into a bit of it'll undergo a metamorphosis. And I think just like a metamorphosis, it sits in a cocoon for a little bit. From 7 to 9 years old, often the Cabernet Sauvignon will take a little dip. It'll close up. If you guys have had the 18 recently, that's a wine that's currently a little bit in its cocoon, and will open up once again at about 9 to 10 years old. And that's when Cabernet, I think, is showing off all that it does. And you
so
take
what you're
years like
saying
20
essentially is you should buy 2 cases of this wine, one to drink within the next 5 years, and then the one to drink, the case to wait 5 years and start drinking at 15 years of age.
I think you should buy 20 cases and drink 1 case every year, and send us a bunch of nasty notes when it's in its cocoon about how this wine's. But then send us a bunch of notes afterwards saying I was totally wrong.
I
this
was
wine's
wrong.
totally amazing.
we could turn it into a whole story, a whole saga with the wines. I love hanging on to these bottles, you know, for that period. I don't think it's, you know, always 100% necessary.
It gives people a lot of concern. The question I'm asked the most. I mean, I'll be over in the tasting room and someone will buy a bottle of our Cabernet and be carrying it out to their car and they'll say, "How long should we age this bottle of wine?" And you know they're going to drink it in the car on the way home. So
That might just be you.
people get really worried about this, and you know. So
We
what
often
can we say to relax. You know, it's
just relax. I think that one thing that's lovely about, I don't know, honestly, the styles of wine that we make is that it's a reflection of our own desire of what to do with our own wines, which, you know, surprise, surprise, is drink them. That's what I don't know. We got all this market research done about, like, you know, what do people do with our wines? What should they do? They should drink them. We don't like to stand on ceremony in terms of having to open it at this specific time or that specific time, but instead make a wine that has that ability to age. And I will say, in terms of like, okay, what's the final year that the 22 will be good, without having to equivocate and saying, well, they just get different, which is true.
True.
We often find that these, vintages that critics aren't going to go, well, this is the one to last for 100 years, are often the ones that come back and really provide a lot of enjoyment to you. Because you've got your famous tasting that you do.
The worst wine tasting ever. I think the point I would make, though, is that what you enjoy the wine with, the food that you choose to pair it with, has more to do with how old the wine is than it actually being old. Because we were tasting some of these older Cabernets and some of the older Zinfandels recently, and saying, you know what, this is not your tomahawk steak wine anymore. This is your aged Gouda, or this is your something more subtle in terms of what you're. So I think the perspective is, you can't change the wine, but you can change what you serve with the wine, and I think that might be something to consider. I mean, obviously this 22. I mean, this can go with roast wild boar. I mean,
I was going to say, we often talk about how our Cabernet doesn't have to be paired with a big tomahawk steak or something like that. But the 22 is currently at that point of its life where, bring them in, still mooing, and it's good to go. It's.
I wanted to get the 40-ounce porterhouse of Bottega last night.
If you do one of those big, like 80-ounce steak challenges or something like that, make sure you got a bottle of Franc.
Here's your wine.
Yeah, here's the wine for it.
Maybe a Magnum.
Maybe a Magnum get you through the whole steak. Then your only cost will be the bottle of Franc. But as the wines age, they definitely transform. I'd say that our Cabernet also is drinkable with things other than a tomahawk steak, and kind of, I don't like that Cabernet sometimes gets pigeonholed into just that. These are both any kinds of roasted vegetables and things like that, but I think especially the Cab Franc goes well with. I'm already thinking, like, I've got some great potatoes from the farmer's market back home. Roast those up with Kelly, or my sister just got some beets, and she was gonna merge those together. So you got the earthy.
Is there a party at your house that I don't know about?
Oh yeah. Could you watch the kids?
I'm sure is in the mail.
But Cab Franc, much more of a roasted poultry or something, a roasted chicken, roasted quail with the veggies, something on the grill. I think having that slight bit of smokiness of the char from a grill actually goes pretty well with Cabernet Franc, because it has this kind of, that pepper aroma can be similar to a kind of smoky mineral kind of charry kind of character.
Well, lots of us are still barbecuing. I mean, we're still summer.
Right? Surf's up in California, dude. we're out barbecuing. But it's as we get into the fall weather, that's often when people think about what am I going to have with my robust red wines, stuff like Cabernet, stuff like Cabernet Franc. The only recommendation I always make is pair it with whatever you will. Just make sure you serve it at the right temperature. And this is something that I'm huge on, is like, whether it's especially if it's summer, but even in the fall, you want to serve this on the chillier side to start, and let it warm up in your glass. And it's going to pair with a lot more foods that way. Whereas I feel like you get a big glass of warm Cabernet somewhere, and you might as well blow yourself out with a big peppery steak or something like that to make it happen.
I'd say pair this Cabernet Franc with friends. This is really starting to open up very, very nice.
Should we pair it with pepper?
Yeah. Not peppers. No.
Oh, come on. You going to take a little bite?
Oh, that's what kind of pepper
That's
is
a shishito. Come on. That's no big deal.
Shishito. Those things can be nasty. I think it's time to ask our executive producer whether there's been any questions online or any feedback here. We have quite a technical staff here. Megan and Tori are standing by to. Tori, any concerns people have about the?
No concerns. Say hi to Diane.
Oh,
our number one fan is watching.
Excellent. Yeah.
She has a tattoo of
Yeah.
Restraining order still in effect, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did Luis Chavez tune in? We got a lot of friends. It's so good to be back with you guys, and please give us a thumbs up if you want us to continue to dribble on here, because we really enjoy this. I hope that's obvious. We don't like to see each other during regular business hours, but these are kind of fun.
I'll drink wine with you anytime.
And we do enjoy drinking wine together.
We've got a little good drift going in the questions. Some
Yeah.
people drinking some other older estate cabs.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Wayne had one with his dad for his 100th birthday a few days ago. I think he said it was in 2018.
Nice.
He's
Yeah.
got 16 and some 15s in his cellar. We've got some questions about what's going on with harvest right now.
Yeah.
Since we're in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so into the harvest one, we talked a little bit at the outset about harvest, but it has been, the name of the game this year is extremely early year, our earliest year ever. That's not due to having this crazy hot summer or anything like that.
It's been very temperate.
It's been actually a very mild summer. We've been blessed this summer. We're going through a bit of a cool spell right now that's kind of put the
We're
brakes.
not going to pick on Monday and Tuesday in the middle of
Right.
August. That's crazy.
I know,
Yeah.
and so it's just totally nuts. All of it started with an extremely hot and dry March that opened up the floodgates early. The vines woke up early. We had a very, very early bud break, very, very early bloom, and that whole when vines start to wake up and when they kind of set certain growth stages of how they act in motion, it's kind of hard to stop those. The vines can do a little bit to pump the brakes, but for example, the time between, take our earliest block of Sauvignon Blanc, when it starts to bloom, you can count 93 days in advance, and that's when we're going to pick the grapes. That just happens to be that way. It's not like we're going, whoop, it's day 93, time to pick. It just happens to circle around 93 days every year. And that's, can be pushed further out in a very, very cold year. It can be sped up a little bit in a very, very hot year. But vines kind of, set their clocks early in the year.
They don't seem to be concerned about my vacation time at all.
Dad, they as we discuss all the
take
time.
such good care of the.
I tried showing them my calendar.
Well, I think the other thing about this vintage that's becoming obvious, and that's that it's not a bountiful year in terms of crop yield. We are looking at Sauvignon Blanc at almost 50% down, and that's now to be fair, we have had two generous vintages in a row, almost three. And so I think the vines are taking a little bit of a break this year. So we're getting less fruit, but it looks spectacular. And that's the signature of a pretty interesting vintage.
So we're both a little tired. We've been picking Sauvignon Blanc every day at 3 a.m. for the last couple of weeks. And so it's been there's always this wall at the start of harvest of Sauvignon Blanc that's all ripening. And sometimes, there are years where we'd be in here and we'd have kind of eyes go in different directions and look a little even more tussled up than we do today. But it has been a fairly even, steady pace to what we've been doing during harvest. And that's for us the marker of a great harvest is when everything kind of just seems to fit in where it fits in.
We're farmers and we're winemakers. It would be disingenuous not to mention that I'm sure all of you've heard that the wine industry is in a little bit of a reset right now. The people are consuming less. We know that's not you. We do not hold you personally accountable for that. But we're seeing that in our own business. And so that's part of the background of this harvest too, is that the industry is sorting itself out. And what does it mean to enjoy wine in a healthy way? All those are really important questions that are affecting our business and very, very much in point. So this is a blind appeal to buy more. No, it's, it's our chance to say we appreciate the support that you all give it. Everyone on this call is no doubt a loyal supporter, and in these times of change in the industry. Our loyal supporters, our frog fellows, our passionate enjoyers of our wine mean extra to us for sure.
And I remember when we were doing a lot of these tastings during the pandemic, I remember we'd get photos from you folks, would send us, and it was a laptop in your home on the table. You guys are having dinner, and we're broadcasting live to your living room kind of situation, and that was some of the most touching notes we've ever gotten
Yeah.
from folks. The idea of being there at the table. I think the industry's challenged right now, and I think a lot of it has to do with is wine healthy? Is it not healthy? And I think that okay, look, very few of us are taking this to the gym afterwards, right? But in terms of it refocuses what we love about wine, which is having the wine with people, with you guys, having the wine with food. Ideally, something a little more than just a big plate of peppers, but go to town if that's your thing. But having wine with food, having it with people, having a conversation around it. Not even, this isn't the goal with these tastings. Isn't to go on about how the pH was 3.67 and all this stuff. This isn't a technical explanation of everything that's in the wine. It's a digging around the roots, right, and trying to find what is interesting about the wines, interesting about why would you drink it? What would you drink it with? That's why we love the questions. Get us focused on what do you drink this with? Who do you drink it with? That's cool stuff. And that's what we love about wine. For me, Dad, the last couple of years of being both of us being on the road more than we've ever been in the past, and you've been on the road for 50 years selling wine in one form or another, it's been cool because you get out there and get to talk to people and get to talk about what makes talk your hair off about what makes Cabernet Sauvignon so interesting or what makes Cabernet Franc so cool. I love that stuff. I think that's fun.
We have a great question from an OG friend asking, they've got a bottle of 89. When should they drink it?
Oh my God! Now here's when you should drink that.
Repeat the question.
So we got a question about the 89, which of course is not exactly a storied vintage. Nope. But it is one of the wines that Rory alluded to it earlier, that I do a tasting from time to time where I will select the 5 most low rated vintages according to the critics in the last 40 years. And so they're literally supposedly the worst wines from the worst vintages. And that's the tasting. I don't tell people until they've enjoyed the wines, and then I tell them, and everyone, the inevitable remark is, but these wines are beautiful. And so it's a good reminder to people not to, two things. One, don't always fall into line with what the critics think. But two, this thing that we talked about very early in this tasting, and that's that the best wineries would rather not make a wine in a tough vintage than to make an improper wine in those vintages. So 89, very early in our history, was a challenge vintage, rain. But we made a spectacular 89. We still enjoy it. We were talking earlier about how much it's changed. That's a almost 40-year-old wine and getting close to it. And so that's not your wine for your 40 ounce porterhouse. This is a wine with an aged cheese or something like that. Its color is thinned out, but it is absolutely gorgeous. And for me, it brings back so many memories. And we've got this tasting at the winery now called Time in a Bottle, and it's where we invite guests to come in, try and taste with us older vintages.
Try and keep up with us, yeah.
Try to keep up with us. And the point of that tasting really is to explore this idea of how wines age and how they gracefully change, and we can talk about the chemistry is what's happening in that, and the color thins out, but the wines become so much more profound. The time to drink that 89 is the next time we can get together and try it together, in my opinion. But it's a good wine. Allow it to open for a half an hour. Be very careful with the cork. If you don't have a Durand, please order one from us. It's the essential way to open these older bottles. And then let it open for about a half an hour, and then think about all that's happened in your own life since 1989.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Dad, but a simple aged cheese, maybe a little bread, maybe a tiny bit of honey or something on the side, just to have some fun with it. But this is not a big Brontosaurus burger kind of wine. This is something for reflection.
You're gonna love the wine, though.
I think we should have a competition, and you guys can both demonstrate how to use a Durand to open an older bottle.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a future tasting where we demonstrate the Durand.
Yeah, first of all, show what it is. It's the put it out there. So this a Durand is what we use to open any bottle of wine that's more than 20 years old.
So it combines a corkscrew or the worm with what is called an asso. So I don't know why they call it an asso, but so this is but basically it's a way of guaranteed every time getting an old crusty cork out of an old bottle without sending it down, without pushing the cork.
Yeah,
Embarrassingly
you all
in the
had that
bottle.
experience. Yeah.
But you can always filter it out, and so it's no big deal either way. And I think it's, yeah, that's cool. I think open up that 89 soon. Get yourself a good good cheese person.
Let me know when you do how it tastes. Yeah, absolutely.
I encourage everybody to go back to the Cab Franc just for a minute, because this has already evolved into more of that kind of like the fruits opened up. This is more of that kind of like almost persimmon and kind of interesting like reddish orangish kind of fruit. I get a little bit of orange peel in the wine now.
Fascinating wine.
And so like
I get the orange peel.
You say Cabernet and then you think orange peel and you're like, no, that doesn't make any sense, right? And in the Cabernet Sauvignon, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But in Cab Franc has this
take some of this Cabernet.
Has this kind of fireworks going on left and right. And so what people so often they open their first Chinon, or they open their first Loire Cab Franc, or they open their first Frog Sleep Cab Franc. They pop the bottle, smells green. All right, toss it. And it's like just hold on just a minute, and give it a moment, because man, that's what develops in your glass. This wine is aging in real time in front of you in the glass and showing off what older wines do as they open up in the bottle over time, and driving a more complex expression even just in front of you, and it having opened up for barely an hour at this point.
Yeah.
We forgot to open these up early before the tasting.
That would have been a good idea.
We're getting the full
We'll talk to our executive producers.
Yeah.
Who we want to thank. Megan and Tori are here. Yeah.
There's a couple of questions about vines being out in the valley, and I think there's been so much media coverage about this that's not entirely the whole story, or not even actually accurate, but rather doomsday. And I would love for Rory to talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
That question came up 3 times in the 20 minutes out of that.
Yeah. So,
all right, TikTok. I do have my massage later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. We'll get to that real quick. I'll respect your massage time. So the question was about people see a lot of news articles and maybe they've come to the valley and see a lot of vines out. And there's a lot of reasons for that.
And we have a fair amount of that.
Yeah, we've got vines out right now. And there was an article recently. It was, in my opinion, obviously clickbaity, about how they're burning vines in Napa Valley, which is a clickbait headline. We'll just put that out there, because that's what you do with vines when you pull them out. The reasons to pull out vines, and the reason that we have pulled out vines, is not because we didn't want the 8 acres of Sauvignon Blanc that we pulled out at the end of last year. We could have really used that Sauvignon Blanc this year. We're not struggling in the Sauvignon Blanc department, but those vines had a vine disease, had a virus in them that was affecting how they were setting. It was affecting their overall quality and their consistency, and it was time. That is the reason why people rip out grapevines. People do not rip out young, beautiful, productive grapevines very often. And that, I would say, at least in Napa, not speaking so much of areas outside of Napa that maybe face different challenges, but within Napa, still largely the reason people are ripping out vines is because they have some sort of virus or they have some sort of disease. There's a virus, the one that we dealt with in the Sauvignon Blanc is called fan leaf. There's another one that's affecting lots of Cabernet Sauvignon and red grapes called red blotch that you guys can Google. All these are just different reasons that you would redevelop a grapevine. What do you do how do you get rid of a grapevine? You pull it out of the ground, you pile it up, you let it dry, and you light the pile on fire.
And you wait for 2 years before you put in a new root. So this is an expensive proposition.
Yeah.
I will say, though, Rory, to be totally upfront here, the downturn of the industry has allowed us to consider to take these vines out, whereas we may have tried to nurture them around by cutting down the crop and getting, but it's a lot of
with the Sauvignon Blanc, I tried just about everything.
Yeah,
Stupid block line. I finally know how to go. I was no longer satisfied with Galeron Block 3 Sauvignon Blanc. If you guys want to look it up, but it's but for sure we have Merlot and Cabernet here at the ranch. If you guys come and visit us here in Napa, you'll see a big open field. You'll see my sunflower experiment out there as a summer cover crop.
But you'll see a lot of grapevines out, and that is all due to this one virus red blotch that was seriously compromising the quality of our Merlot and Cabernet grapes from here at the winery. And look, is there a way? Did they still make what would legally be considered Rutherford Cabernet Sauvignon?
Yeah.
Sure.
They would have been selected out even when we made the wine.
But that's what was happening for what we were doing is selecting those grapes out, and they were not making the blend for years on end.
Yeah.
Well, that's not downturn or no downturn. Growing grapes that you then push down the drain essentially or sell off at a loss is not how you want to be doing this. So I think the downturn in the industry allows for decisions like that to be made. What feel like cold-blooded, but in the end, from a viticultural perspective, it's the right thing to do, and that's why all this is happening around the valley. So, as usual, there's always a kernel of truth behind those kinds of stories. Don't believe the hype so much as ask good questions of people who are in the know, and like you were doing. And the fact is that it's no fun tearing out grapevines at all. It's exciting to be able to go back in with something new, something fresh, but you do lose something, and so it's one of the more serious decisions that I make as on the vineyard side is it time to redevelop something. It's not something you just kind of wake up one day and go, well, this vine's 15 years old, time to rip it out, or just look at dollars and cents and say, well, we could get an extra ton per acre if we replanted this to young vines, old vines. And our oldest vines go back into the 40s with our Valdegay. The Cabernet Franc vines planted in 1989, they're beautiful vines. There's reasons to keep these old vines in the ground. All the things we're doing with organics and dry farming are an attempt to lengthen that age of the vine and really help explore that. We talked about how those vines will tap into their deep root systems during difficult years like 22. Well, that's what you rely on when that happens.
Intelligence. We'll close with this. It is absolute. Oh wait, our executive producer says there's one more question here. We've gone overtime.
Talk for a few more minutes. Someone asked where you guys, other wineries you recommend in the valley, and I think it would be nice to close out by sharing a little love around.
There are
other producers we respect.
Other producers.
What is these other producers you speak of?
Yeah.
No.
Look, here's what I would say. Find out the wineries that are still family owned, because they're the ones that are hurting the most now. We don't have the private equity money. So our friends at Transberg, our friends at the Trefethens, our friends at Spotswood, our Kathy Corus, and the Truchards, beautiful, fantastic wine family down. Who do you add with us? I mean,
I shout out to my mom, Tracy, Julie Johnson, and Tracy Saboris. Our longtime, your original business partner, and still longtime friends with the Turley family, the Bialy family. We
Chapelet family up on the hill, looking down on us peasants in the field.
Even Stu Smith, all the way up there.
There's a very few. There's only about 15 to 20 family wineries of any size left in Napa. It's tending to get a little more corporate. There's a lot of really small operations here too, and they bear a lot of interest and support as well. So we can publish a whole list at some point, but these wineries, these family-owned wineries, need support more than ever, and so ourselves included. So please, just pay attention. Where you spend your dollars, meaning a great deal right now, and these family wineries really can use all the help they can get. Come and visit. It is gorgeous here at the winery now. We've got 150 people on property today, maybe 200 people on property today, enjoying wine. And the gardens are in full bloom. The weather is absolutely gorgeous. And so put us on your itinerary to come and visit, drink these wines with us. And we'll be back. Are we doing another one of these shows, you guys, sometime soon?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
We'll be able to taste more wines. We'll get like 8 different wines next time.
Well, and we'll double our audience, no doubt. We've enjoyed this little bit of time with you guys, and let's wrap it up for today so I can get that massage in and my nap
You got a
and,
priority.
and
That's
a
great.
proper dinner with these wines,
Yeah.
which are gorgeous. The 22 Cabernet Sauvignon and Chavez Leeds, presumably Petrus clone
I can't throw that one in there.
Cabernet Franc,
Yeah.
which both of which of these wines are of a significant merit and have a place in your cellar. Enjoy them and be in touch with us. We're easy to get a hold of, and we love hearing.
Please send
from
us
you
any
guys.
positive comments about the wines.
Oh,
you can send any negative comments to do not reply at FrancSleep.com. And we'd love to hear from you guys about the wines. Send us extra questions. Obviously, we're pretty talkative. Love to talk about ourselves on camera. Boy, yeah. But it's
and we stayed awake the whole time.
oh my god, yeah. I'm talking about a nap. No, but it's really love sharing this time with you guys, and I can't wait for the next round.
There you go. See you all.
Updates. Thank you.